Alright, today we're going to be working on this P0401 error code I have on my 2001 Ford F150. It's an EGR issue. Got this code pulled up on my dash command app. Looks like this, which is connected to the truck using the OBD2 scan tool that I got from Amazon. I have another video that explains the setup of all of this. Alright, so here's my truck. Typically with EGR, there's three main things that you need to check. Primarily, it's going to be the throttle body, which is under here. A couple of things with EGR valve, which sits back here, and then the pressure sensor for the EGR, which is under here. I'm just going to get the camera down there. It's this piece, and it attaches with these two rubber hoses underneath, and then it's got an electrical plug here, and it just kind of floats. It doesn't really mechanically attach to anything other than those two little short hoses. So this, you basically pull the plug off, pull these two hoses up off of there. You swap out this little piece, and that's pretty quick. You know, those hoses are hard to get off of here, but you don't want to cut them or damage them. You want to reuse these two little hoses. Typically, they stay pretty pliable and don't need to be replaced. They are some special hoses you'll see when you take them off. They're not just plain black pieces of hose. This piece is probably about $30 at your local auto parts store. And now let's look at the EGR. I guess first you want to take off this cover, which I believe this is a 10mm, two 10mm bolts here, and then you've got one on this side. So you pull that off. I know I'm going to be pulling the throttle body off, so I'm going to go ahead and pull off the entire air tube here and get that out of the way. Alright, I pull those bolts out. Now this cover just comes off. I'm going to go ahead and loosen this clamp. Pull this off, this, and this should come right off of here. Alright, I got these two hoses pulled off. Got this pulled off the throttle body. I went ahead and pulled off this sensor here, just a little plug like that, and loosened up this clamp. So I'm going to take this whole piece off here. Alright, so I pulled that out. Now I've got all this area in front of the throttle body clear, so I can work on that. I already replaced the EGR. I just wanted to show you how that comes off. There's a vacuum line on top of the EGR valve that comes off. You've got a 10mm nut here, which holds on a bracket for this line, and then you've got a 10mm bolt that holds the EGR on. And after you take this nut and the bracket off, there's another 10mm bolt that holds the EGR on. Now on the back of the EGR, there's a metal tube with a nut here that holds that on. That is a 1 1/16 wrench you'll need for that. So definitely make sure you have that wrench before you attempt to replace your EGR. You can't use a socket or anything. It's got to be a 1 1/16 wrench. It's probably the best thing to use because it's such a tight fit in there. And as you can see, I had some lines, some hoses that were dry rotting, so I already replaced those with just a silicone replacement hose. Did that long one there that runs to the back of the throttle body, and then there's the short one here for this metal line that connects to the EGR spacer, or the top of the manifold actually. Okay, now to to get to the final fixes for this P0401 code, we want to pull the throttle body off, and I'll show you exactly what needs to be cleaned. There's two little holes that can get blocked up with carbon that it will cause that EGR circulation error. And then also the idle air control. I'm going to pull this off. Typically this needs to be cleaned back on this end of the IAC. So we're going to take that off. There's a connection here. Got to remove these lines and the throttle body. Then we'll remove it from the vehicle to clean it. You don't want to clean it in the truck. You can't really get to what you need to get to. And just real quick, when you have these types of harness clips here, the best thing I found to get that off is just a little tiny screwdriver that you will put in right here. You push that in there. And you kind of hold down a little clip there, and then this should just slide right off. Drive in all the way. And there it is. One hand. And the two little bolts holding the idle air control on. There's one here and then one on the other side. These are a 5/16. They are in there kind of tight because that's a steel bolt going into a aluminum housing here. So sometimes they can be kind of tough to get out. You'll find the same thing on these throttle body bolts. Which these are also a 5/16. Okay, I got the idle air control out of the way, so we'll get that cleaned. It's right here. You'll see some carbon build up down in these holes. You go out in the sun. You'll get some carbon build up down in these holes, and you just want to make sure that gets clean in there. We'll clean that one with carburetor cleaner. Careful not to get it. Keep it turned up like this when you clean it, so you don't get carburetor cleaner down inside the sensor in here. Just in this bottom piece. And then when you're working on the throttle body, taking that off, you don't want to take off this piece. Just leave it screwed on there. This is a throttle position sensor, and you don't want to move that. Most likely, it's the reading on that is fine. So just take off the electrical connection and leave that attached to the throttle body. Okay, on this side of the throttle body, you'll see several things need to be removed. One is just this spring, which that's pretty easy to get out using a little pair of pliers. The other is this throttle cable, and it just wraps around here and then drops into this little groove here, that little metal piece on the end of the cable. So that should be pretty easy to get out. This piece you'll see will need to slide forward. As you pull this back, you should be able to slide that forward. It's going to clip in there pretty tight. It'll be hard to get out, but that's how that comes off. Okay, so I got those three things off. There's the one cable with a little metal piece on the end. There's the other cable that slides onto this, and then the spring at the bottom. So now that's just freely moving there without anything attached to it. Now we're ready to unbolt the throttle body. 2 bolts on top, 2 bolts on bottom. Should be able to pull that off. Alright, now I've got the throttle body off. See, this side looks okay. This side is it's really gummed up with stuff, and I can tell the throttle even sticks a little bit as I try to open it. So we'll get that cleaned up good. But then I realized the ports I actually wanted to clean are in the EGR spacer, which is this this next piece here. So I'm gonna go ahead and take off, pull off this vacuum line down here. I'm gonna take off this vacuum hose on the top. I believe this is the PCV hose down here on the bottom. It's kind of hard to see back there. And then I'll go ahead and take off the EGR valve from this side, and then this should be ready to unbolt. And again, it's going to be 5/16 bolts on each side of the EGR spacer. The other two are hard to get to on this side, but they are down there. Yeah, I took my my one hose off from up here. That's this one. It goes over from there all the way over to the top of the EGR spacer. I'm going to take the EGR valve off, the vacuum line on top. You've got a 10 millimeter bolt on this side. It's like that. And then I've already taken the nut off of this side, and then this bracket was on there. Slide the bracket off, and you'll see the those threads, where that bracket was bolted on. It's just on top of another bolt, basically. So you'll need a deep well 10 millimeter socket to get this bolt out. Also, for this top hose and the hose back down here, it can be challenging to get off. So I picked up this hose puller wrench from Harbor Freight, which makes that a lot easier. You can get down and get right on that hose right at the end, and then you just just push it off, and it's a lot easier than trying to get your hand in there and pull on it. Alright, so I got the hose off back there. I think before I take off this last bolt holding on the EGR valve, I'm going to go ahead and remove this pipe that goes into the back of the EGR valve. And now with that bracket removed, you can see that nut a little bit easier, and you'll need the large wrench to be able to get on there, which is a 1 1/16. Alright, now I've got the nut loosened. Hopefully once you get it, break it loose and turn it a time or two, you can turn it by hand like mine, but if not, you'll just have to work at it with the wrench for a while. It's kind of slow going. Then once you get that nut completely off of there, it'll slide over the pipe some, and then that whole pipe's going to slide out of the EGR. If I can do it with one hand. So you can see how that comes out of there. There we go. Now it's completely free. Here's what that second bolt looks like. It goes in the back of the EGR valve. Okay, now we are ready to remove the throttle body. Got pretty much everything disconnected, so it look like that. I'm gonna go ahead and unbolt it, and then once it's unbolted, I'm gonna try to disconnect the PCV back there on the back. Okay, I've got the 2 bolts off on this side of the EGR spacer, and then on this side there's a bolt way back at the back. You can barely see. I've already taken the bolt out. The other one, it's kind of hidden down there. It's hard to see. But I just threw this, I'm using this U-joint. I've got it broken loose, so I'm just using this U-joint to turn it, because you can't really get your hands on it too easily. And that'll be it. This thing will be ready to come out. Alright, once I got that last bolt out, I was able to get my hand back in there and hold on to that hose while I pulled the EGR spacer off. I pulled on this end. So now I got that off. So here are the ports that we need to clean. It's kind of hard to see. Let me move to some different light. All right, so here are the ports we need to clean. You'll see there's a hole here, and then the other hole you can see is completely blocked with gunk, carbon, and other gunk in there. So I'm just going to work on that with this little screwdriver and some carburetor cleaner, and we'll get it cleaned out. Alright, I've got the throttle body cleaned up. It looks much better now. Nice and clean and shiny in there. This no longer sticks like it was doing before. So that's good. Also, just sprayed this out with some carburetor cleaner. Got it clean on the inside, so that's ready to go back on. And when I was spraying this, I did, you want to keep this part up, so you're only getting the brake cleaner or carburetor cleaner down in this bottom portion here. EGR is new, so I didn't need to clean that. But I do have a good view of this. I started cleaning this, and I just wanted to show you before I finished. You can see how big the hole is on this side, and if you look at this side, it is completely blocked. It's supposed to be just like that side, and it's supposed to go all the way through. I can see down inside this one, it's blocked down in there. So it's going to take some work, and both of those come out on this side over here. So I just need to make sure that passage is clear all the way through. I got a couple pieces out of there already, and this is very hard buildup. It's hard to even break it by hand. So I was using this. This isn't hard enough to break it off, even though it's a pretty heavy metal inside there. I'm gonna work on it with a screwdriver and some other things, and we'll see how that goes. Let's see here. Yeah, the screwdriver will go in there. It's just a matter of breaking it all up. So I'll work on this and let you know what it looks like when I'm done. So I'm using this pick. It's a pretty tough little pick here. I'm just getting inside the holes there, and this is already what's come out of there, and it's pretty tough going getting it. So just work at it a while. You'll have stuff coming out of here and coming out of this end, but most of the blockage seems to be just in this area right here in the channels where it makes a right turn. So yeah, once you get that clear, then you're ready to go at it with the carburetor cleaner and get all this cleaned up. Well, I finally got that EGR spacer cleaned out. There's two little holes I was working on. So that's a lot of the debris. And then I went at it with the carburetor cleaner, cleaned all my parts. And then got back in the sunlight here. I looked through these two holes, and I saw even more stuff. So I started scraping at it again and got all that out. So now the holes are looking pretty clear. So we're ready to go back on. I hit all of my surfaces with some 600 grit sandpaper. I'll put on some new gaskets and then get this thing back together. Alright, so everything's ready to go back in. I got all these surfaces cleaned up and picked up some new gaskets. I just want to give you these part numbers just so you'll have them. These are Felpro. Part number there. The other throttle body gasket is here, which goes on what I call, I call this the EGR spacer, but I guess it's technically just part of the throttle body. There's a CarQuest part number here. There's that one. Alright, so I've got the first piece back in. All 4 bolts in, new gasket, along with the PCV hose back here on the back of it. So it was kind of the first step of putting this back together. I think next I'll go ahead and put on the EGR valve. So I can go ahead and connect this hose in the back and this pipe and get some of these things tightened up, and then I'll probably go and do the throttle body next here, and then I'll do the IAC here, idle air control, in that spot. Alright, well, I've got the EGR bolted back on. and I've got the pipe bolted on the back of it here. Getting ready to hook this bracket up that goes on there. And when you push that on, you need to attach the hose on the other end of that bracket there. But as soon as I get through doing that, I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect the battery, which I should have done earlier. I just want to go ahead and make sure all the power is depleted completely off the computer, so that when I start it up, it's not holding on to the previous readings in the computer, but picking up new readings from all the changes we've made here. And that'll also clear out the codes, although I could use the dash command app to clear the codes. Disconnecting the battery will also do the same thing. Alright, so I got the throttle body back on. All 3 items connected here. Got this cable. Just make sure you get this clipped on all the way. And this cable here, make sure you get this in the slot properly here. And then the spring. There's only 3 things that go on there. Also put in the idle air control. Bolt that in. Plug this back in. My clip broke on this plug, so I have it tie wrapped on. So I have to keep an eye on that. Make sure that tie wrap stays on there good. So next I'm going to put on the air plenum here, and then I'll connect this and this on here. Here's the other hose here, and that's about it. I'll reconnect this to the air plenum, and I'll reconnect the battery. We'll be ready to fire it up. Alright, got it all back together, covers on, cleaned it up a little bit, battery's reconnected, so I'm going to try to start it, see how it goes. Idling a little high. I'm assuming that's going to drop down after a few seconds here. Check engine light didn't come back on, but that's because we had the battery disconnected, so that cleared out. So I need to drive it another 50 miles or so, and then we'll see if that comes back. The idle's dropping a little bit. Still a little high, may have to adjust that. Before I put stuff away, I just want to go over some tools that I used that you want to make sure you have before you get started. One is the 1/16 inch wrench, 10 millimeter deep well. Want to make sure you have one of those. And the only other socket you need is a 5/16. The extensions and the U-joint were helpful. As well as the hose pullers, those were helpful. Only used these to pull that one cable off of the throttle body. This was very handy in not only removing some of the clips, but also getting the carbon buildup out of those EGR ports. Also used brake cleaner. I used an entire can of brake cleaner and the whatever I had left of the carburetor cleaner. So make sure you have plenty of that before you get started. Clean everything. Gasket scraper. Also use this to get in those EGR ports to try to break up some of that carbon. I used the sandpaper on the surfaces where the gaskets go. Some towels. That's it. Make sure you have your gaskets too before you get started. I just wanted to review the dash command before I put any miles on the truck. So now that I've finished everything up, there's no check engine light. Connected to my OBD2 sensor. So if I look at the diagnostics, and down here at the bottom select read codes. There's 1 stored code found, 0 pending, 0 permanent, 3 complete, 5 incomplete. So down here where it says 3 complete, 5 incomplete, that's what you really need to pay attention to. So the ones that have a red exclamation point, catalyst monitoring, evaporative system, oxygen sensor, here's the EGR system here. As long as it's incomplete, that means you haven't put enough miles on the vehicle yet for it to be able to pass inspection. So if your goal is to get to pass inspection or to confirm if the code is really cleared, you just need to drive the vehicle until that comes back with a green check mark. If it's yellow, don't worry about it. That just means it's not part of what's red on here. Alright, I drove exactly 40 miles this morning. All the codes have cleared. What you want to look for is the readiness down here, 8 complete. Once that indicates that, you know that everything's good. You should have all green check marks unless it's an unsupported item. It'll have the yellow circle there. And once you have that, you want to look to see if you have any codes. There's 0. If it's not ready yet, if you don't have enough miles on it, it'll say 1 stored code, and the code will up here at the top will say system readiness, which just means you need to put more miles on it to confirm that the code is cleared. So that was it. It is fixed, ready to go get it inspected.